In this episode, we're speaking to Marley Major. Marley is the mastermind behind the party goddess. Marley is renowned for orchestrating events for the elite clientele such as Snoop Dogg, Sofia Vergara, Pierce Brosnan, to name but a few. Her insightful book, but are you making any money, has made her sought after coach in small business realm, helping entrepreneurs navigate modern business challenges and trends. Beyond her own writing, Major has contributed to several influential works on leadership and entrepreneurship and is a regular guest on many of the nation's top podcasts. Let's speak to Marley and find out how she changed her life by changing her mindset. Welcome, welcome. This is Gull Khan, your money mindset expert. And today I'm so excited. I'm speaking to the amazing, the wonderful Marley Major. Welcome, Marley.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Marley, everyone's heard your intro. They know how fabulous you are, but please, in your own words, tell everybody what it is that you do.
Well, I basically have a celebrity-based event planning company in Los Angeles called the Party Goddess. So we do all kinds of events that are very high profile for very high net worth individuals. However, now that's the like juicy great bits. But the reality is that I've been in all kinds of businesses where this one included, where I could not figure out, even though I went to business school, how to make money in my business. I
Mm.
just, even though I knew, quote, how to do it, I could not apply the principles, evidently, to my own company. And I don't know if that's because, it's part creative, like, oh, you're in a creative business. It's a little harder to quantify than widgets and all these other, who knows? But I ended up writing a business book called But Are You Making Any Money?
Mm.
After a question that my dad would ask me after I would tell him about all these fabulous events I was doing. He'd be like, yeah, great, but are you making any money? And when I realized that I couldn't answer that question and say yes, and I'm making X amount and I'm thrilled with it, I realized like I need to take myself back to business school, basically, back to my own business school. And so I also have a company now called the Profit Goddess, which helps other people who are in the same boat and just can't find their way out of a paper bag, even though they should be able to.
Wonderful. I mean, I'm a money person, so I know this all too well. A lot of people, a lot of business owners, actually small
Right.
business owners, are
Yep.
actually busy bees. They
Right.
are chasing the tail and they don't even
Yep.
pay themselves. So,
Correct.
I don't strictly follow a profit first, the principles, but
Yep.
from all my companies, there is a set amount that gets paid into a separate account for me, where I pay
Right.
myself my dividends, where I pay myself my lifestyle, etc. And
Right.
regardless of what's happening in the other companies, that comes to me first. So we know
Right.
that's going to come out. So all the companies have to be self-sufficient. I mean, I can loan it back every now and again, but generally
Right.
I tend to avoid that. But I completely understand where that comes from. So I know how much help this is required because we
Right.
can all get really engrossed in, oh, let's build a company, let's do this and so forth, and not realize the numbers have to work for you
Right.
and you have to be paid as well. You have to
Well,
get paid.
and you brought up a great point. You said, you don't necessarily go with the whole like profit first piece. And what's so ironic about that is you're correct, because so many times now we think, oh, profit first is like saying like, we're putting like we're some big conglomerate putting,
Hmm.
profits above everybody else. But in the context of small business owners, what we
Yeah.
have to keep in mind is that we're not even talking about, forget about profit, like once we're paid and our expenses are covered. We're talking about so many times entrepreneurs aren't even covering their like expenses of their
Yep.
home
Yep.
office,
Yep.
etc.
Yep.
So it isn't even it is like, let's just fill the big deep
Yep.
sinkhole of this business that we're saying is a business. We're running it like a business 24 hours a day, but it's more like a hobby in the sense that it doesn't have those guardrails. So it just sort of depends a little bit on the context, right?
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and small business versus big business. But you're exactly right. I mean, when I hear you say, oh, I put this aside for myself and I put this aside, I mean, that's to me is like music to my ears. And the number of people who have small businesses who do that is about zero.
Yeah,
So,
very
I
few, and
mean,
I have zero. Obviously, I'm a money mindset person, so I have
right,
zero guilt about it. That was my first thing. Okay, that needs to come out first, and then we have to
yes,
work out a solution for everything else.
right,
And I remember my
right.
accountant initially said, "Well, this business isn't making you profit." I'm like, "Well, tough luck. It needs to make
Too
profit because
bad.
yeah,
Right,
that invoice has to be paid. It's
right,
legitimate. It's my time. Yes, but
right.
we have so we I mean, what I ended up doing was we ended up bringing more business. Marketing is something that I'm very good at. So we ended up bringing the business. So it was
Right.
justifiable. And I haven't increased that amount. It's
Right.
stable. So if you, when they, you know, the accountant went back and looked over the last 12 months, doesn't matter how much money we made. I took the set amount and it was
Bingo.
justifiable. But we were able to overcome the downfall because we made money later on. So overall, we're okay. But it was
Well,
because
right.
I dragged my heels. I'm like, no, that's not. I'm not working for free. That's not
Well,
happening.
and I think that's the biggest hurdle. And it sounds so silly, right? Like us
Yeah.
having a conversation. Like if we talked about something and said, oh, our friend is just going to get a job with XYZ large company. And they said, hey, listen, for the first year, we're not going to pay you. I mean, we would both laugh, right? We'd be like,
Exactly.
that's not even like you've been scammed, you've been catfished. I mean, we wouldn't even have the conversation. Yet small business owners all the time, and not just for 1 year, like
Mm,
for many years. And then which is a whole piece about your mindset thing and so many other podcasts that you've done, is then the shame that piles on, because then
yeah.
we start going, wait a second, what am I doing wrong? And instead of thinking like, oh, what am I doing wrong, like with the crux of my kind of maybe my business operations, we start thinking, what am I doing wrong with my fill in the blank marketing company or my dog washing company, or whatever company we have. We start turning it on ourselves,
Mm,
thinking it's the quality of our service or something we're doing, when what we're not doing is just paying ourselves, right? Which
exactly.
is just
Exactly.
the first place to start. But it's a weird conversation to have, but unfortunately it is the conversation.
Yeah. I think we need to talk more about this in the next segment and really deep dive into this. I think this is a really, really hot topic. And I think it's very relevant to this day and age as well, because more and more people are starting new businesses and they're
Right.
not understanding the I suppose the pit holes, which is that you
Right.
end up paying yourself last, whereas you should be paying yourself first. But we'll cover that out afterwards.
Sure.
I'm more interested in your story because I think you
Yeah.
have a fabulous story. Because I want
Yeah.
to know how it is that yes, you weren't making money, but you still had the mindset to start out your own business and to go into an area where there's imposter syndromes everywhere. Like, oh my God, how do I deal with all these big celebrities and all of that? So how did you navigate yourself, and how did you start this amazing company? Yes, you've got the second one later on, but how did you set your first one up? Just talk us through that.
Well, the very first one I started in, and I think it's funny when we're talking about, oh, I started this company. Yes, I did. I started a bunch of them since right when I got out of college. But the irony for me is almost like we really should talk about how the fact that I probably wouldn't be able to have a boss because I'm too mouthy and too opinionated and too whatever, even at a very young age, right? So it almost is like
I know
it
the feeling.
started,
I know the
right,
feeling.
right. Well, it's almost like it started me, but I think at the end of the day, from very early on, whether like I was 4 years old and I would sell these shrinky dinks, which are those little plastic sheets you make in the oven as a kid. You take the little plastic and you draw on it with a Sharpie and then you cut it and you shrink it. And I was like, that was something I could reach on the counter. And then I would put these strings on them and sell them door to door. And my mom was mortified, but at the same time, like kind of fascinated that how would I just have this drive to do that? And
Yeah.
I just remember absolutely loving the whole process. And I just couldn't wait to get out and quote sell. Okay. Which is hilarious being 4 years old doing this. But business has always been my focus and kind of trade. I don't know how else to say it. And so
Hmm.
even in high school, I would paint t-shirts. I remember going to Neiman Marcus and I got this amazing t-shirt that had this watermelon kind of dyed and painted on it. And it was ridiculous. And my mom's like, this is such a waste of money. The conversation you have
Hmm.
with your mom, about everything. And she's like, you could make that. And so I was like, So I actually worked school and then I went and made the t-shirts and had a big business and different versions of these t-shirts. And it wasn't because I needed money. It was just because that was like I just loved it. And so then,
Hmm.
by the time I went to Georgetown, I mean, I ended up getting into the food business and the restaurant business for really one reason, and that's because I interviewed a chef for one of my classes by accident. And he was 20 years older, and I decided I needed to marry him. And once again, I was totally laser focused on, okay, I've met this guy. I think I'm never even had a boyfriend, but I need to marry him. How am I going to do that? I only have like 40 minutes for this interview. I better figure it out. And then I ended up working with him. And then, you graduate and you're like, okay, well, with my big mouth, I'm unemployable and I want to see my husband. And how am I going to do that? Because in the restaurant business, you work 24 hours a day. So we came back to California, my hometown, and got into the restaurant business. And then, that's a whole train wreck as far as the wheels kind of coming off the bus with that, and ended up being an amazing investment, etc. But I cut my teeth on in the restaurant business, and then started a
So
catering
stop. So
company.
did you end up marrying him then?
100% I married him. I was engaged the month after graduation. I mean, I'm a goal setter. I fail fast if I get what I want. And then I, face plant. Oh, 100%. I married him. I have an amazing son. I ended up like getting married. I mean, it just depends on how much, exciting, juicy bits of information you want. I mean, I ended up having this horrible skiing accident that while I was in the restaurant, during the time I was running the restaurant, and he and I were having, because we're having, he's supposed to be running the back of the house. He was an amazing, amazing chef. I mean, fabulous credentials from New York. And I was supposed to be running, the books and that kind of stuff. And here we're having all these, this is in the days before reality TV. It would have been great reality TV, but it's like, oh, this girl and this super chef, who's 20 years older, running this restaurant. And my whole goal was to do.
How old were you when you get married then? If he's 20 years
Well,
older than you?
I got married at I graduated from college at 21. I got married at 22. He's 20 years older. You remember
He
he'd had a
was
full career,
42.
so nearly 40 years old. Yeah, well, 41. Yeah.
Wow.
And yep. And
Is the marriage, how does the
so,
marriage work? That's such a big age gap.
well, it is such a big age gap, and just the look on your face. If, like, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening audio wise are unfortunately missing these details, but the look on your face was the look on my parents' face and everybody else's
I'm
faces. I
surprised.
mean, I'm from the most like traditional conservative background. Like, you do this and you do that. I mean, it's just, it might as well be like Connecticut with the picket fence. And then here
Yeah.
I go and say, oh God, by the way, I'm marrying this chef. It's like, wait, huh? Like, I didn't think it. And so I can't even remember now your question. I mean, it's like, it was ridiculous, but
Yeah.
I follow my gut. And when people say follow your gut, and as I say, today's one of my absolute best friends. I had no business getting married at 22 years old. I certainly had no business getting engaged at 21 or making a life altering decision like that. And unfortunately, sometimes I think bringing him along for the ride, but I did. And he's, as I say, he's ended up, I mean, now he's 70 something years old, right?
Mm.
That's crazy when you think about it, because it's literally been my whole adult. I mean, I've known him longer than I've
Anybody else?
yeah, than I've known anybody else. But it's magic, and it's a weird thing where he's almost ended up being a mentor to me. When you go on then to do
Yeah.
your next act or your next business or your next, because when you go through things like that with somebody in a business plus a marriage plus, you have all this stuff all mixed up like this, like bowl of spaghetti. It goes one of two ways. You either hate each other, or you really can rely on each other. And he and I, at the end of the day, in the trenches, can totally rely on each other. And so that's kind of the beauty of what comes out of all of this stuff. But it's been a it's been a rocky road. It's had a lot of fabulous highs. I mean, I thank God ended up, we bought the restaurant
Hmm.
before we built it. Thank you, Jesus, because we then didn't have to rent it. We owned the land. That's why it ended up being such a fabulous business for me to be in, because I still own the property.
Hmm.
And that, even though I was doing the party goddess and off doing these celebrity things, then kind of my mom passed away a couple years ago from cancer. And when she got sick, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been doing all these things my whole life for like somebody else or because I should. And that's when I just decided I was going to be a rancher. And so, I, knowing once again nothing, I bought 20 acres of land in Santa Barbara County and decided I was going to teach myself how to ranch. And that has been just pretty much the cluster you could imagine it to be. But because the goal is to be a sheep farmer and all this stuff. But I'm getting there. So we can certainly talk about the patents I'm looking
I'm
for.
just fascinated by your
Well,
story. There's so many facets to your story, which
there
is
are so many
we can
facets.
unpack this for hours and end. But I what I want to know
Yes.
is you've done so many of these bizarre, amazing things.
Right.
Whether you fall flat on your face or succeeded doesn't really matter. And you have succeeded, which is amazing, by the way. Fabulous.
But
Hats off
I've
to you.
fallen flat many times. Yes.
I don't doubt that for a second, because for
Right.
someone like you, you remind me, I think you're an exaggerated version of me. I
Yes.
don't do
Oh,
as
yes.
crazy as you, but I mean, I know firsthand if you go out for things, if you go after things the way the way you do and the way I do,
Yeah.
single-minded, focused, you're going to
Yep.
fall flat on your face because you haven't
Yes.
done the risk assessment as you well as you should have.
Absolutely. Thank you. You know what? Where have you been my whole life? I haven't done that. You just gave me the aha moment. Like I can teach my grandchildren. I have not done the risk assessment. Do you know how many business books I'm looking at right now over my shoulder? I could fill the freaking Library of Congress. Yet you're right. How many of them talk about risk assessment? Have I done one for myself
Oh,
or
your
for
life
anything
choices as
ever?
well. Yes,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And I know the
Yeah.
first hand.
Thank you. No. Okay, great. So yeah,
But
risk
but the
assessment
question
is lacking.
the
Correct.
question I have for you is every time I know this answer for myself, but I want to know the answer from your point of view. Whenever you
Right.
do go on, you have this new goal that comes up, like this ranch, which is amazing, like 20 acre of land, but fabulous, wonderful. Where do you discuss that with just you with your partner, or do you just make a
Oh,
decision and you
why
just
did oh, no. That's why I'm always between husbands. No, I'm between husbands. So right. So that's why well, I think that's why I'm between husbands is because not that I'm ever going to get married again, but I think the problem is I don't discuss because to me, you have to keep in mind, I still have this 4-year-old mentality of I'm going to go door to door selling shrinky dinks to the neighbors. I mean, in my mind, when I get these ideas, this is the greatest thing ever. Like,
yeah, exactly,
so
exactly. I know the feeling.
right. So there's what is there to discuss? It's like saying, do you want to accept the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, of course. I mean, so to me, these are fabulous ideas. I'm literally in the middle of one that reminds me of kind of what you're saying is so my daughter's a junior in high school. She will be out of the house, in a year and whatever it is, 4 or 5 months at the time of this taping. And, so the ranch will be done by then, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I've been in California most of my life. But I'm like, okay, am I going to do this? We've just had the wildfires here. We were just evacuated, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm kind of thinking, what am I going to do when she's off to college? Well, obviously, I'm going to stay in California because I got the ranch. But then I'm just going, you know what? I love this ranch thing and I love that lifestyle. So I just decided my new place. I'm going to spend half the time in San Ynez and half the time in either Montana or Wyoming. We can fast forward and see. And so, how do I do? I just got on Realtor.com and I started looking at all the properties. And I read some articles about, I love Montana anyway, but I was like, what's the next spot besides like, Big Sky and stuff? And then I started reading some articles about some developers and stuff going into Wyoming and where they're putting $1 billion. And I was like, well, if they're putting $1 billion and I kind of go down the road 5 miles, 10 miles, maybe I should still be in good proximity. So I started marking all those properties. That is literally exactly right this minute how I'm doing it. Now, I have no connection to Montana or Wyoming whatsoever. If I leave this podcast right now and tell my friends this is what I'm doing, they'll lose their mind. They'll be like, what are you talking about? But in my mind, my daughter's going to graduate and I am like splitting the dishes and half are going to San Ynez and half are going to,
Wyoming.
or Wyoming, to have my sheep farm and shop and I guess, sip hot toddies at the lodge at the Amman or something. I don't know. But I'm just telling you that's what I'm going to do. And there's not much risk assessment other than I feel like lately I do spend a lot of time looking at my personal financial statement going, okay, how much wiggle room is there? But that's how I do it. So I just dive head first and then I create a Pinterest board. That's another thing. I have Pinterest boards on everything so that I visualize and manifest everything. And then 2 nights ago, somebody told me it was a new moon in Aquarius. I love astrology and all that, but I forget, like this means this. And they just said it was a good day to manifest. I was like, oh, great. Okay. So I went to my, my like whatever project management board, and I just started writing out all the different components of what I was manifesting as far as the flowers I was going to grow and the this I was and all these things. And I just in my mind it's just very clear what everything looks like. Um yeah. So it starts with realtor.com, I guess. Thank you. I'm not compensated for this message. And an article, let's say in the Wall Street Journal about who's doing what in what part of the country. And then I take a leap of faith. And then once I decide, I don't look left, I don't look right. It's like a horse in the Kentucky Derby. I just have my blinders on.
Yeah.
I don't hear anything, see anything. And again, that goes back to risk assessment, right? I should probably be paying a little bit more attention. Now I'm more comfortable in my skin, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to sink a husband like with me, right? I mean, it's like I've built up what I have, and I can make those decisions, and my children's stuff is secure, etc. So if I fail,
it's all you.
The end of the world, right?
Yeah. So if you were to go back and give advice to your younger version of yourself, what advice would you give?
It's very simple. I would just say, whoa. And I would just say, fine, keep doing it all. Just, I would say slow down, but I don't mean slow down in terms of the ideas or the vision boards or the manifesting stuff or deciding what it is I want. I would say slow down on the final pulling the trigger. Meaning I didn't have to announce so much like I'm getting engaged and then I'm getting married and blah, blah, blah. Because once you put that out there, right? I think that especially the younger you are, and I was 22 years old. So the younger you are, then you don't walk back decisions that maybe aren't the best ones because you've got the component of being embarrassed. Now you've got the component of, oh, you're going to look like a failure, et cetera, et cetera. Now, as we all know, most of the time people aren't really paying much attention to what you're doing anyway. Yeah. They don't care. But if I had just said, fine, do all this, say you're going to get, do all blah, 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 blah. But just before the signing on the dotted line, right? Just take a little bit more time because he's still going to be there if he's the one, right? Yeah. Or you're still going to go into the restaurant business and have this amazing career if that's what you're supposed to have. Now, I can just imagine my younger self would tell myself quite an expletive. But you asked what advice I would give. I didn't say I would take it.
I love that. Because when you say this, I'm just imagining myself and I'm thinking, yeah, if I go back in time and I give myself the advice, that's the exact advice I would give myself, slow down, right?
Yeah.
And I know for a fact, I would say, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Knock yourself out there. That was a fun exercise. Like, okay, next. Like,
because I mean, I don't regret anything in my life. Even though it's been a roller coaster and wrong decision after wrong decision, but I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be the person I am. I wouldn't have my life shape up the way it is. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's far from it. There's so many things wrong with it.
I get it.
But I like where I am. I like who I am. And I like the person I've become by going through those turmoils. Right. That's the word I can use because that's what I put my through. Plural.
I would call them tsunamis on my side of the coast,
I think it's similar to mine, especially in my two marriages.
Right.
One decision was left up to my dad. The second was just rushed in because of family, because of whatever reason. But it was very stupid, very, very, very stupid. For someone who's supposed to be smart.
Right. Well, welcome to the supposed to be smart club, who's like the biggest. I mean, I might as well have forget the scarlet letter. I mean, at least that was the letter A. I should have the scarlet F that says oh my God, you flunked this course and this course and this course in life, left and right. But you bring up a lot of good points. And one of them is, but then we wouldn't be here, right? Like all these things about your marriages or mine or this, that you wouldn't be here having this top, whatever, 0.00% podcast with all these people listening and all these lives that you changed literally around the world if you didn't have all this stuff that got put into this bag, right? Yep. That then gives you wisdom and empathy and ways to talk to other people. And I on one of your podcast, I was struck by you were talking about your cousin who's in California, and you were saying how like for her birthday, like she, treats herself to this,
Yeah,
and and I obviously don't know too much of the backstory, but it very much sounded like we don't get to those points, right? Where we are like, oh, yes, I am going to go to the blah, blah, blah for lunch. And yes, I am going to use the good china and the
mm,
good lace lingerie, even if I'm just going to the grocery store. We don't get to those points unless we've been to the complete other side,
exactly,
right?
100%.
And so I would venture to say your cousin is probably very fabulously living a very wonderful
She is. She's moved to
life,
California as well.
right, and but she probably is not taking too many I don't want to use an expletive, but she's kind of like this is the way it is to a to a certain extent. You start
Yeah.
just going, I'm gonna put up with this, I'm not gonna put up with
Yeah,
this.
she's no, she won't put up with any nonsense from her
No,
family included, by the way, because she has
it,
very different
huge.
ideas to the rest of her family, like complete polar opposites. And she takes no BS from no one. She's very, very principled and very
Right.
inspirational.
But it comes from a position, I would imagine, of it's critical thinking. She's not a heroin addict who just said, "Hey, I'm not listening to anybody," right? I mean, she's probably very smart.
Very smart, yeah.
And different cultures, like I can have a totally different culture, yet I have a very traditional family structure that's very close. And when my friends are like, "Well, who cares what I'm like, "Oh my God, who cares what my parents think?" Like that's everything to me.
Mm,
No matter how much you try to unwire it or whatever, that's how we're wired. If
mm.
that's how we're brought up. And but it takes so much to get to the point where you were like, "Oh yeah, thank you. No, I am just where you can confidently say, yeah, no, I'm not going out tonight. I will be in my pajamas, binge watching, whatever it is. That there's just it's a very
You
clear
have to get to a
answer.
point where you're comfortable with your own skin, and she is.
Totally.
And I think, as I am, as am I. You need to get to a point where you respect and love yourself enough to say these are
Right.
my boundaries
Right.
and enforce them, especially with family, with respect. I mean,
Totally.
I'm quite lucky that yes, some of my family, extended family members, right? They may have notions about me. She's X, Y, and Z, and I get
Right.
told that apparently I've got anger issues. I'm told
Oh,
about
good.
that.
We all do. We all
Yeah.
do.
So I sort of let that slide. I'm like, okay, fair enough. That's what you
Yeah.
think.
Right.
But I mean, I don't remember the last time I was angry at this person, to be honest. Like, maybe when I was like 10 or
Right.
11 or 12 or so, I don't know. But anyway,
Right.
apparently at the age, I still have anger issues. Okay. But it's
Right.
because I do have certain boundaries and you're not
Right.
allowed to cross them. So without me raising my
Oh,
voice,
exactly.
those boundaries are enforced. And therefore the notion is, oh, but she's argumentative or she's got anger issues. So let's not cross those boundaries. I'd rather have that tag of being, argumentative or anger issues, but as long as you respect my boundaries. But you don't get to this point unless you've been trampled over and you've been through, tsunamis, plural
Right.
again, not one, multiple, right?
Yes.
But the point
Yes.
being, as we wrap up this episode, what I'm getting is make decisions for yourself
Yep.
and then have the gumptions to stick the decisions like you have, which is
Right.
amazing. And then, and then you deal with the consequences, good or
I
bad
was gonna.
alike.
That's huge. And that's the thing is that I'm 100% willing to deal with the consequences, right? So I might be like, something with boundaries with myself or whatever. I'm going to be a little bit more careful about boundaries with my daughter and her friend because I know
Yeah.
that relationship might affect the mom and her going to school. But you're right with my stuff, correct. But what I find when you mentioned the quote, you have anger issues. What I always find is the people who have things like that to say, knowing nothing about the situation you're talking about, is they always think you have anger issues because what it really means is you didn't back down when I told you to.
Oh yes, I think.
So that's all it is.
Yes. I mean, with this particular cousin of mine, because it's actually the cousin California cousin, it's her brother who she says that her anger issues,
Oh, priceless.
because
Okay.
he's a complete extreme opposite to
Yeah.
her, and I got on well with her. I don't get on well with him at all, but because I really don't like him either. I don't. I respect his life choices, but they're very different from my idea of
Right.
how a person should live. He's got multiple wives. Where the only person in my entire family who has multiple wives, by the way. Even the Muslims are allowed multiple wives. He's the only person I know, entire family and friends alike, who has more than one wife. So
Right.
his idea of women and and plural
Sure.
and plural wives
Well, he
is
thinks
very
very
different
highly
from
of himself. I
yes.
can't
Oh,
handle one.
very much so. So
I can handle one, and he can handle 12. Okay, so and then can you imagine you and your cousin both? I mean, so to him, you two are like flashing,
opposite.
I mean, you two are like the star that's about to bomb in his backyard, where he's got one thing going. So all he's got to spend his whole life calling you two out. I mean, you two are
Yeah,
like
he
where it's
does,
like
and he is.
no, no,
Yeah,
no,
exactly. And you know, when he does call me, he calls both of us out.
yeah,
More so me because I'm cousin, she's a sister. But
sure,
he, it's both of us. It was
yeah,
quite funny.
right,
But anyway, the point being, I'm okay with that because
yeah,
I don't agree with his. I respect him. It's his
yeah,
life choices which are good for him.
sure,
I don't agree with him, and
right,
therefore, whatever opinion he has about me, I don't
sure.
really care.
Right.
You know,
Next.
and that's why it's you know you have, but to get to this point, you have to develop thick skin. You have to develop self-respect, and you have to understand. Doesn't matter what these individuals think about me, have opinions about me. I know who I am, and I value myself, and that's all that really matters. And I think that's what I'm getting from you is you have to get to that point. And when you're
Right.
at that point, you have the self-confidence to make
Mm-hmm.
decisions for yourself. And only then do you have the ability to deal with the consequences, good, bad, or ugly. And there are people who'll be waiting in the sidelines to see if you fall flat on your face. And a lot of people do. Oh, she
Mm-hmm.
thinks who does she think she is, etc. Or who does he think he is, etc. It could be for
Mm-hmm.
male or female.
Sure.
But you need to be able to stand there. And if you fall, get up, dust yourself off, and walk off. Or say, you know, enjoy the success. Either way, it's all you, and it's you doing it yourself.
Yes, and you made a great point that I also want to underscore is there is no shortcut to this point.
There is
With
no.
everything in life these days, we've got drive through coaching, drive through coffee, drive through, Botox. I mean, you look younger in 10 seconds, but in this case, I have yet to, I'm curious if you have found any shortcut. There
No,
is no
there is
class
no.
you can
There's no.
take, whatever. You just skin your
There is.
knee,
Yeah,
and then
no.
the skin gets tougher.
Yeah.
Period. That's the only way. That's the only way around.
I
You
find,
just go
yeah,
through.
I find, you know, there's a phrase that was said to me when I was very, very young. There's no such thing as free lunch.
Oh,
And the other one is there's no shortcut to success. And I truly, absolutely 110% believe in both of those statements. There is, I've, yes, sometimes you think that the path you're taking is longer than it should be, but it's got a beautiful destination because of the length it takes you to, you know, to arrive. And the things you have to learn, and the journey is just as, so I'm going to add one more point to this. I
yep.
find in my life the journey has been as valuable and just as beautiful as the final destination. You know, getting to that particular when I bought my company, my especially in the steel, I mean in the steel manufacturing now, I went in a different direction. So that's something I was like give you a small example of how we're similar. I'm not an engineer, I'm a lawyer by trade, and I haven't worked as a
Mhm.
lawyer since went on maternity for my daughter, which is like 100 years ago, right?
Yep.
So I've done various other businesses, and then one fine day, literally decided,
Yep.
what do I want to do? I want to go from coaching. I want to, you know, go into different businesses. So who do I admire? Andrew Carnegie, right? And Ratan Tata. Two people I really admire. One
Right.
who's passed away recently, Ratan Tata. He's a steel magnate, a recent one, amazing gentleman. And Andrew Carnegie, one of my all-time
Mm-hmm.
favorite heroes, more than Napoleon Hill. Okay, so what do they have in common? Steel. Let's go into steel.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I promise you, that's the reason I went into steel.
As you're talking and you're naming these people, I mean, if I listen to one more Andrew Carnegie book on tape, read one more thing, Napoleon Hill, I was like, oh yeah, steel. I mean, I could start knocking off all these late 1800 guys. I might as well have like a plaque in my house. Yeah, I get it. So of course it's like steel. It's like, to me, it makes perfect sense. But as
But
I'm
you,
listening to you, I'm like, oh, she's going somewhere else with this. This is not going to make perfect sense to other people. To a crazy person like me,
if to you, and you'd understand. And people are like,
yeah,
but you're not an engineer. I'm like, no, I'm
yeah,
not.
right.
I'm not an engineer.
And you're probably a lot better at it because guess what? You're coming from a completely fresh perspective, whereas the
I
people that have
am.
been
I
in it
have.
and
I've done.
entrenched.
The company has done. We turned the company around. The company's doing really, really well. I have to say, I have got an amazing team. But
Yeah,
I'm the only woman. By the way, I've tried to hire more people.
imagine,
It hasn't happened, but we
imagine
have.
that.
Yeah. So there's all my team is full of amazing men, and they are fabulous engineers, and the company's doing really, really well. But
Right.
because you know, but I don't need to be an engineer. I'm running the business. You know, I've
Listen,
hired amazing engineers to do that practical part.
Listen, there's a reason that sheep have a shepherd. Okay. Sheep don't have just one bigger sheep. Sheep have a shepherd. They have something that is a totally different type of entity that is herding them and guiding them and is taller and seeing different things around the corner, et cetera, to protect them. And then there's the sheep herding dog at the back, also kind of keeping things in line, right? You can't see the label from inside the jar. So it doesn't surprise me what you're saying, because being an engineer, they're in that world. You're not in that world. You don't have all the baggage, I would assume, of all the ways that quote won't work,
I
right?
don't I don't think that way. I just
You
go
don't think
straight headstrong. This is
right.
gonna work. This is gonna work. I remember
Let's
one of my
just do
yeah.
this, and they're like, okay. And so everybody's got their role. So when you say you have an amazing team behind you, it's like, of course you do. You would have to, right?
Mm.
Uh, because we can't do any of this stuff other than, I mean, without an amazing team. But that's a whole other podcast about,
Yeah, of course. You
skinning
have.
your knees on that kind of stuff
Oh
and
yeah, I
hiring
mean
the right
that's a
people.
lesson learned hard way as well. Again, another
Yeah.
lesson that learned the hard way. But I
Yeah.
remember one of my accountants did say to me in the beginning, he looked at me and he saw where the company was. We're literally 3 months away from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And this is last year, beginning of last year, last
Mm-hmm.
January. And he looked at me and he said, "Have you got a way out?" I'm like, "No, I've burnt all my ships.
Yeah.
We're gonna either do amazingly
Right.
well or we're all sinking.
Right.
That's it on the island,"
Right.
with that kind of
Right.
mentality. And he
Right.
looked at me and he said, "Cool, you're either really, really brave or you're really, really stupid." I'm like,
Well,
"I'm a bit of both."
right. Well, absolutely. And that's what my dad said. He's like, I don't know if she's going to be a billionaire or homeless from one day to the next. But it's true, right? You have to have these ridiculous ideas, because if they weren't a ridiculous idea, I mean, then that's where all these other companies are. I'm not saying because the people aren't good enough, but I'm saying it has to be so, like, imagine the person that first said, oh, I'm going to fly a plane over water, or oh, I'm going to like make a phone call from one box to another. But I mean, people had to be like, what are you talking about? Like, I just came in from the fields and you're talking about this somehow is going to connect to this, and I can call somebody across the country. But you have to have those, if I think it, I can make it happen.
Exactly, exactly. On that note, we're gonna wrap this up. So, Marley, tell us, how can we connect with you? Where can you find you on the internet?
Well, very simply, of course, go to Instagram at the Party Goddess. That is where you'll find the most colorful aspects of my life. And of course, it all starts there. So go there. Of course, you can go to LinkedIn, but I think Instagram is a great place to start. And then DM me and we can continue the
The
sheep
comment.
conversation, or the steel conversation, or whatever else.
Wonderful. So if you're listening to us on the podcast, the links for Marley will be on the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, then down below in the description section, we'll have the links for Marley too. Go check her out and see how she can support you and help you to have more fun in your business. Thank you so much for coming today, Marley. We have to have you back for Money Talkies, but today has been a fantastic conversation and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to me and Marley today. I will be back with another amazing guest, finding out how they changed their life by changing their mindset. Until the next time we meet, this is Gull Khan signing off. Take care and bye for now.